I mean, I've thought about this a lot. Mothering the living and mothering the dead. It's a very hard balance because, I know how important it is to love on my other children and grieve Caroline at the same time and to include them in that. I've been really selfish in my grief. I think I'm the only one in the world that's missing her, and I'm not. There's a whole community, and then my husband and, Lauren and Logan both, and her friends. It's been really tough for me. I've been kind of selfish at that. Let people love on you. Let them take care of you. Let them do for you. And I didn't do that. It might have made things easier for us or for myself, or for my husband, my other children, if I would have just accepted some help. I think that's probably the biggest thing I'll take from it. Don't push people away.
Welcome to Rocket Motivation, brought to you by Gat Creek Custom Furniture, handmade right here in America. This week's guest daughter, Caroline Berry, was diagnosed with stage 4 alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma when she was only 14 years old. This is a very aggressive form of childhood cancer. Caroline was only given a 30% chance of survival. After a courageous fight, Caroline succumbed to this cancer. This week's guest is going to tell you her story of dealing with the emotions of being there with Caroline, every step of her fight, and how she is dealing with the loss of Caroline, and most importantly, how she is continuing Caroline's legacy of raising awareness of childhood cancers and the need for more research and treatment. Jennifer Berry, welcome to Rocket Motivation.
Thank you for having me today.
Now, Jennifer, I know this is not going to be the easiest thing for you to do, so I'm glad you came on Rocket Motivation to share your story and to hopefully help others going through something similar. So thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Jennifer, if you would, kind of catch us up. Tell us about where you are now in your life, your family, where you live, what you do.
Okay, well, we live in Spanish Fort, Alabama, and my husband Gordon and I, we've been married for almost 26 years now. I have 3 children. I always will include Caroline in that number forever. My oldest daughter, Lauren, is 25. Hopefully will graduate in May. And my son, Logan, is 20. He's a really good hard worker, so proud of him too.
Okay. Let's go back to, I believe it was 2017 when Caroline was diagnosed. But before we get there, tell us about Caroline. What kind of a person was she?
Since the day she was born, she was always just so spunky and sassy, and she never met a stranger. Always, I think, had a zest for life, and maybe she knew her time was short. I don't know, but she always enjoyed every moment.
So tell us about how it came that Caroline got diagnosed.
It kind of started as something as simple as, oh, my hip kind of hurts. And then she would go off to volleyball practice or go off to, club tryouts and not ever say another word about it. But as that time went on, she kept complaining that her hip was hurting. Being a 3-sport athlete, we just, assumed it was some sort of injury or a tear or a pull or something. So we went to the orthopedic. He suggested we go to physical therapy. So we did about 5 weeks of physical therapy with 0 improvement. Pain kept getting worse. And at that point, I think my mother's intuition kind of kicked in, and she started losing weight and didn't have as much energy. So I made the call to call her pediatrician, and we hadn't seen him in a really long time. She was never a sick child. And I just went in and I said, something's not right. And I asked them to do blood work.
And so what did the blood work show?
All of her numbers were off. She was severely anemic. I know that her inflammation factor was really high, her CRP. We left the doctor's office that day and got a call that night asking us to come back for additional blood work the next day, and we did that. And they sent us home thinking we probably wouldn't have any results or anything until, the next day or later on. And we got back across the bay, not even to the house yet, and we got a call from the pediatrician saying that they suspected she had leukemia and for us to get to USA Children's and Women's that night as soon as possible, like go home, pack a bag, and go. And that's how fast that happened.
Originally, they thought it was leukemia, which we know it wasn't that. How long does it take for them to figure out what type of a cancer she's got?
It was a process of elimination, like ruling out originally, different things. So they did a bone marrow biopsy first to see if it was leukemia. It was not. Then they kind of just started down, I guess, a checkoff list of what scans or whatever needed to be done. It also was a holiday weekend. It was National Championship weekend. You know how football is around here. New Year's Eve. It was January the 3rd that we got the original diagnosis, and we went into the hospital on December 28th.
What are they telling you?
Well, on January the 3rd, they called us out of the room because we knew we had told them, anything they had to tell us we wanted to be told before, not in front of Caroline. We wanted to discuss it as a family. They pulled us aside and sent us to a conference room to wait on the doctor. And, time escapes you at that point. I think in our guts we knew it was bad, terrified. And, the doctor walks in and tells you what kind of cancer it is. And, of course, you say, is it rare? That's the first thing you want to know. Can it be treated? And she said that it was very aggressive, the type she had. We knew that it had already spread. We knew at that point it was in her bone marrow, and we knew that it was in her spine. And, then she looks at you and just says, unfortunately, there's only about a 30% chance of survival. And I think at that point I was numb. I don't remember feeling or really hearing anything after those words. I just remember my husband breaking down, and I was like, oh, I have to stay strong. I didn't know what else to do. I felt like I was just trying to have to be strong for everyone.
Did you guys talk to Caroline to break the news to her, or did the doctor do it?
The doctor did it. We all went in there together with her nurse and the doctor and my husband and I. And she knew. She was so smart. She knew it was cancer. It was really hard. The first question to come out of my 14-year-old's mouth is, am I going to die? And then, of course, being a 14-year-old, it's, am I going to lose my hair? So it was a really tough few days in the beginning, trying to keep her positive and not showing her that I'm upset or that I'm scared. I knew that, I had to stay strong for her.
How tough is that? Your world has just been devastated. I'm sure all you want to do is go in a hole and cry for days.
Yeah.
But you can't. You've got Caroline to think about. You got to stay strong for her. How do you do it?
I don't really know how you do it. I think your mom instinct kicks in, and I know I went into protector mode and survival mode. I wanted to protect her and guard her, and, I was worried about what information would get out to her friends and to the community. I didn't want people to ask her questions about her cancer, how bad it was. I didn't want people to ask me. I did what you said. I did kind of go into a hole. I pushed people away. Yeah.
Why do you think you did that? And I guess it's because everybody reacts differently. You have some people that have something like this happens, and they want people around. They want the support. They want this and that. You kind of went the opposite route with it. And why do you think that was?
I think part of it was fear. I think the more I talked about it, or the more I was asked about it, the more real it made it. That probably sounds really strange to say.
Not really. No. As soon as you said that, I thought, boy, that makes a lot of sense.
I know. I didn't want to be reminded of it every second of our journey. I was painfully private to relive it every second when everybody would ask you. And as soon as you would, answer somebody's question, you would get another question. And people, I know they mean well. I don't want to talk about what stage cancer my child has. I don't want to talk about what her survival rate is. That's private. That was private to me. And I never spoke of it, ever.
You start treatment. Mm-hmm. Tell us about that.
So she was on a very aggressive 54-week chemo protocol. And those first, I don't remember the exact time, but 4 to 6 weeks, she was receiving some type of chemo weekly. So she was on a compressed cycle. It was very aggressive. So they knew, they had to hit it hard. And in the beginning, we were in the hospital after diagnosis for about 13 days. That was our first visit. It was tough. We had a lot of medicines to try to keep down, a lot of nausea, and then just her, in the beginning days, she was terrified and she was scared and she didn't know if she wanted to fight. I just had to keep reminding her, you can beat this. You're strong. You're so tough. If anybody can beat it, she can. That was kind of how we looked at it.
Right. And as the treatment went on, the 54-week treatment plan of chemo, of course, Caroline loses her hair.
Mm-hmm.
And, how did she handle that? A teenager
Yeah.
and a girl.
Yeah.
That's, if I lost my hair, no big deal.
Right.
But that's a huge thing. How did she handle that?
I will say that was probably the toughest day during treatment, was the day that we had to, make the decision to go, it's okay, it's time, we got to go ahead and get rid of it. It's fallen out. But I remember as it started kind of to thin out, and she would wake up and it would be on her pillow. And she would say, oh my gosh, Mom, my hair is falling out. And I'm like, baby, it'll be okay. You still look beautiful. And one night she got out of the shower and she looked at me and she said, Mom, I need you to help me brush my hair. And she said, I'm afraid it's going to all come out. And she sat in front of me on the floor, just like, she would have done when she was a little girl. And I'm brushing this long brown hair that she had. And as I'm brushing her hair, clumps, just giant clumps are coming out. And she would say, Mom, is it bad? And I would hide it under the towel in my lap. And I said, no, baby, not at all, And I never even told her of the hair that was in my lap under the towel. I do remember when we did make the decision, like I said, she lived with a messy bun on top of her head, and it had dwindled down to nothing and kind of matted to her head. And she was like, okay, Mom, I think it's time. And her nurse in the hospital, Robert, he's amazing. He brought his clippers to the hospital, and we had a little party in the room, and they decorated her room and shot off confetti cannons. And, her best friend, Alaire, came and sat with her through it. And it was just, they tried to make it the best we could. She didn't look in the mirror for about a week. She wore a beanie the whole entire time. She wore a beanie in the shower. It was a really hard thing for her to grasp. But once she embraced it, she was fierce.
Well, as the treatment goes on this 54-week journey, tell us how it progressed. Did she have some issues, some problems? How did it all unfold?
She did really well in the beginning. Probably about June or July, like when radiation treatment started. She had radiation to 5 sites in her body. And I think that really took a toll on her, the radiation treatments in combination with the chemotherapy. And she started getting really sick after those radiation treatments, missing counts, not able to get her chemotherapy on time. And she had 2 septic infections, pneumonia.
Well, and when she gets those infections, and she gets them because the chemo wipes out her
everything.
White blood cells.
Yeah.
So she has no way to fight off an infection. So she gets those infections. Does they have to stop the chemo?
Yeah, so like with childhood cancers, you have a very strict protocol that you follow, and, it's designed to give them the best chance of survival. So it's critical, especially in her aggressive state that she had, to get them on time and to get them the week you're supposed to get them. So it would happen at first. She'd be like a few days behind and miss chemo treatment, and then we'd catch back up, and then it got to be weeks, and then, 2 weeks, or we would be 3 weeks in the hospital fighting a septic infection, multiple stays in the PICU. And then we tried not to make it a big deal, because those are things you couldn't change. It was at that point when we knew we had missed so many chemos back to back to back that we had kind of even been told in the beginning that, if she did beat the cancer the first time, it wouldn't be if the cancer came back, it would kind of be when it came back.
So from the beginning, I know she's fighting it, you're there with her. Everybody's trying to fight this thing, but even best case scenario, it's, in the back of your head that it's not going to turn out well.
Yeah. Also, one of the chemo medications she was on, one of the side effects was foot drop. So in the beginning, it wasn't really alarming that it happened. She was scheduled for scans within the next week or so. So we had a PET scan that came back clear. The first time she had a set of clear scans, she was like, Mom, can I make a post? Can I tell everybody my scans are clear? And I'm like, I think in my heart, like I knew that if you did that, like people would think, well, she's cured, she's going to live, she's fine. And I was like, why don't you wait till the next set of clear scans? And so when that December she got her, news that the scans were clear, I let her make that post. And she made a glittery sign like, cancer-free or clear scans or something, to post it on Instagram because she loves social media. And, in my heart, I don't know, I just had a feeling, and she kept getting worse. Her mobility was not great and it was not getting better. I just had a feeling, and she started having like what we know now were focal seizures in her arm. It would just kind of, jump. We didn't know what that was. I called the doctor again and I was like, look, I know she just had clear scans, but something's not right. And so they did the MRI of her brain and she had a mass on her brain. The cancer had spread.
Let me go back just a second because, Caroline at this time, she's a teenager and you got, social media is so big. Because you told me what you just told me about the Instagram post you wanted to make and how you're like, let's wait. Did she want to be on social media all the time to talk about her cancer?
Yes, she did. She, of course, right at diagnosis, she was like, Mom, let's make a Facebook page, and I was like, oh, no, I do not want to do that. So it was probably 3 months into her journey before I let her talk me into making, a support page on Facebook, and we did that. But, she kind of ruled the roost with social media. She was in charge and she let me know she was in charge. And she used that platform for greatness. She really did. She let people ask her questions. Like, she would say, ask me a question, anything you want to know about cancer or my journey. And they would ask her questions and she would answer it. And she would make, posts and just awareness posts. She was truly unique. She loved social media. She loved her friends, like anything.
And so obviously she's not the private person that you are.
No, she is not. And I do not know where that came from.
Yeah.
People say she's more like me than I say. I used to not be this private, but she is just so spunky. And
do you think, though, that probably helped her get through or handle what she was going through?
I definitely do. I think it was like her therapy. It made her feel good to be able to let people know what was going on and, that I was a normal child just like you before cancer. And, my life has changed and it's not the same. She wanted people to know. But that was not me. I was too private for that.
All right. So she has the brain MRI, and so the cancer has spread to her brain. So what happens at that point?
The very next day, we had emergency surgery to have the tumor removed. But that same day that we found out she had the tumor in her brain, I remember going in, and I say there's no bigger fear than when you're a mom with a child with cancer and you look at a doctor and you're like, you overanalyze a look or a comment or a conversation. And I remember thinking, when I walked into that room when they were telling us, just the look and like the doctors and the PAs, they weren't even able to look me in the eyes. So I knew at that point that it was bad. And, for a doctor to look at you and say, there's no cure for your child anymore, it's probably the most devastating thing, as a mom, because your time is short.
Well, how do you handle that?
I don't even remember. I really don't. I tried. At that point, I let Caroline kind of lead the way. She was so worried about us as a family and about her dad. He never missed a day of work. And before she went into surgery to have that tumor removed, she said, I am not going into surgery until you make a GoFundMe so Dad can have help paying bills. And I think for a 15-year-old child to not even worry about herself, but to worry about the cost of a medical bill, it's crazy.
Well, and so at this point, then the doctor, there's nothing much else to do. So any treatment at this point, you're trying to buy time.
It's to buy more time. It's palliative care. It's to, give us more time that there wouldn't be a cure. It would extend her life possibly.
Now, does someone tell Caroline this after the brain tumor and the surgery that there's not much more to do?
If you want the honest answer, no. I did not tell her that at that point because I needed her to fight. I didn't want her to give up. So no, I did not tell her that day or going into surgery or even the weeks to follow.
And so the realization hits. There's no cure now. You're just buying time. So what's going through your mind and how are you dealing with this?
When I tell you all of those days are a blur, I think I just did the best I could to get up in the morning and get dressed and try to make every day count for her. She pretty much got away with anything she wanted to get away with, do anything she wanted to do after diagnosis. It was tough on us as a family. I think we all kind of dealt with it in different ways, but I was still in mom protector mode. I didn't tell anybody.
Right. Now, when you said Caroline got away with anything, what were some of the things she would do?
Well, she wasn't supposed to get any new animals in treatment, but only my child would come home with a birthday party favor gift as a golden retriever puppy. So she went to a birthday party and came home with a golden retriever puppy. And she texted me from the party and said, "Hey, Mom, look at this puppy. They're giving it to me." And I said, "Ha ha, real funny, Caroline." And she said, "I'm not kidding." And I said, I just ignored her. She came home with a puppy, like that kind of thing. She would come home with a puppy, or we were supposed to be more cautious during treatment, and she'd always want to be just as normal as possible and go to the movies with her friends or go to lunch with a friend.
So toward the end, though, at least before the very end, she was actually able to, do things with her friends, try to be a normal teenager as much as possible.
We did that all along. I could have protected her and kept her in a bubble and isolated her from everybody and everything, but she was already going through the biggest fight of her life. Like, I couldn't do that to her. She was so social and loved her friends that I couldn't do that. So they would always come over and visit. I'd have hand sanitizer on every table and mask for her friends, and she'd be like, "Mom, don't do that." And I'm like, well, if they love you, they're going to come to the house anyway. They have to. I kind of bend the rules a little. We didn't even tell her doctor for a few weeks that she had a puppy. She let it slip. And I was like, what do you want me to do about that?
And I think you were telling me that she actually went back to school.
She did. So during that little time from when we found out that tumor had spread to her brain, we went out to Houston to seek some alternate therapies and additional treatment protocols at MD Anderson. So we were in Houston for a few weeks. We traveled back and forth. And after her last set of scans there in March, her tumor had started to grow back, and she had 2 additional tumors in her brain as well. And it had also spread to the fluid in her brain. So at that point, we had kind of exhausted really everything medically. And, I remember telling Caroline, we were staying in the Ronald McDonald House in Houston, and, she was just crying. And when your child looks at you and says she doesn't want to die, I don't even know what you say to that. She wanted to live. She had big plans for her future. And to tell her that, it was really devastating. So when she found out they were going to give her a chemotherapy pill that she could try by mouth, and she could take it at home, there would be no more traveling back and forth. The first question she asked was, "Can I go back to school?" And I thought, wow, for my child that literally ran out the door every morning with her shoes and her makeup and her volleyball bag and got dressed in the car and did her homework on the way to school, she wants to go back to school. So we made that happen. And the child life specialist at USA Children's and Women's made that happen. And the principal at Spanish Fort High School, he was like, "It's okay. She can just come to school. She doesn't even have to do grades or anything." When I tell you the world revolved around Caroline, it really did. And so she did have a few weeks where she was able to go to school, and she helped manage the volleyball team. Coach Boykin was amazing and kind of welcomed her back with open arms. She was able to do some really great things. They even nominated her for homecoming queen.
How much did she enjoy that time back at school?
She loved it. She only got a few months in high school. She was diagnosed in January, so she literally got the first semester of a high school experience. So she was loving it, new clothes, new outfits,
And didn't have to do any homework.
And she knew she didn't, too. So she milked that.
Well, I think she deserved that.
Yeah.
That.
She just wanted to go be social.
Right. Well, I know at the very end when things, when you're approaching the end, it gets bad when she actually is in the hospital right before she dies. But before that happens, she makes a YouTube video.
She does a September before she passes away.
Okay. Tell us about that video.
she came to me and she said, Mom, I want to make a video for September. And September, I know a lot of people probably don't know this, but it's Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And she said, I just really want everybody to know, what this month is about. I want them to know that gold is the color. And we talked often, and in October, every sports team, everybody, even the cheerleaders, they have pink cheerleading uniforms. The football teams wear pink socks, pink armbands, like everything. And she said, Mom, I want the whole world to go gold. She wanted everybody to kind of embrace it and do that. And she made that video and she said, Mom, I want you and Dad to leave. And she sent us outside and she shut herself in her room and, put her phone on the tripod and made the video. And she called me in there afterwards and she said, okay, I'm done. She said, will you sit here and watch it with me? And I said, I sure will. And we laid in bed and we watched it together and just cried. I was so proud of her strength. What I look back and I think about, I don't know that I really realized it then, but she didn't really just think about herself. She thought about everybody. She thought about every child that would, had cancer or would get cancer after her. She wanted to make it better for everybody.
Well, anybody that is listening to this podcast, just go on YouTube and search for Caroline Berry, and you need to watch this video. It's amazing that a girl this age would come up with that. Like Jennifer said, it's not about her. It's about childhood cancer, and it's about the research that's needed. It's about the raising the money. It's about everybody else. It's a must watch, that's for sure. When things are getting bad, I think Caroline's back in the pediatric intensive care unit. Tell us about your time with Caroline during this time.
I'll never forget the day we went back. It was October the 31st. It was Halloween, and she loved Halloween, and she had already, planned out a joint costume for her and her dog Buddy. She loved to do that for every holiday and every Halloween. And that morning, she was just having really severe headaches. And it was because the tumors were just getting too big. The pressure was getting too great. And, she said, I need to go to the hospital. She, of course, I don't want to die. That came up multiple times. And we just rushed her in the car and took her to USA, and we were there from October 31st to November 22nd, the day she passed away. And I think as a mom, we got to the hospital and I knew that we weren't going home, and I panicked and I was like, oh my goodness, I have sheltered her. I have not been honest with her friends. Like her friends, I was so worried about them. So I made sure that they had a chance, every single one of them, to come to the hospital and tell her goodbye. And we were able to do that. So she, her pain was getting so bad and so great that we struggled as parents to find that balance between keeping her comfortable and having her here. So it was a really tough decision every time we had to increase the sedation meds, because we wanted selfishly to be able to speak to her as long as we could.
Do you remember the last conversation you had with her?
I do. There hadn't been very many lucid days with her, during that time. Like I said, she was heavily sedated. And I remember one night, it was just she and I. We were in there by ourselves. And she hadn't spoken in days. And I just went over there to her and I held her hand. And I just said, I'm so sorry. And she literally just opened her eyes and looked at me and said, it's okay, Mom. I wouldn't change it for the world. And I thought, oh my goodness. I think she knew at that very moment what I needed to hear as a mom. The guilt that I still have and I experience on a daily basis is something I wouldn't ever wish on my worst enemy. It's horrible.
Well, what guilt do you have?
Well, I think as a mom, I should have known she was sick well before she was diagnosed. I feel like if it was caught earlier, she would still be here. Did I make the wrong decisions in where she got treatment? Should I have done something else? Those are things that keep me awake at night, to be honest, still, almost 3 years later.
Yeah, and it's easy for me to say this to you since I didn't go through something like this, but giving her diagnosis, there probably was not anything else you could have done to make a difference.
I know, and I think rationally I can tell myself that, but the mom guilt is just overwhelming. Most childhood cancers, they're misdiagnosed, just like hers was. We thought it was a sports injury. But with childhood cancers, it's critical to catch them early, and you just have to push as a mom. I feel like I should have known better.
For other people that are going through this, and based on what you've learned, I mean, is there any advice that you can give to other mothers that are, going through this type of childhood cancers with their children? I mean, what can you tell them?
I mean, I've thought about this a lot. I'm definitely not the perfect person to ask this question. I did a lot of things wrong, and I made a lot of mistakes. I think probably the biggest thing for me, I would say, let people love on you. Let them take care of you, let them do for you, and I didn't do that. It might have made things easier for us or for myself, or for my husband, my other children, if I would have just accepted some help. I think that's probably the biggest thing I'll take from it. Don't push people away.
Well, and that's another thing, too. I mean, you've got 2 other children living their lives during this time period. I mean, how did you handle that?
I mean, I don't think I handled it well. I'm not really sure. My daughter Lauren was off at Troy, and it was her senior year, and she was cheering, for Troy University. And, I never missed a game or an event for any of my children, so it was really hard. I missed like her senior night and all of that. And Logan was a senior in high school, and he was on the golf team, and it really affected him a lot more than I know that it did. But he, had who's now his current boss, kind of took him under his wing and, loved on him and gave him a job. And I'm very thankful for him for that, because we did miss a lot.
Well, tell us about the Barry Strong Foundation.
Well, the Barry Strong Foundation is doing exactly what Caroline wanted it to do. We do many things. Our main focus is childhood cancer awareness and research funding. And of course, 2020 derailed us just a tad, but we're working back really hard, trying to get back into the schools, have the sporting teams participate in gold outs, and have gold jerseys. Spanish sport volleyball and Coach Boykin have been great, and the baseball team tonight is having a gold out game. They have gold jerseys for childhood cancer awareness, and I'm very proud to say that, actually just mailed my check into research this week, and in 3 years we've raised over $100,000 for childhood cancer research, so I'm very proud of that. We also do help local families. We assist them with, their mortgage or their rent or their utility bills. We work directly with the child life and the social worker at USA Children's and Women's, and they let us know if there's a family that's in need, and we do help with that.
I know a big thing that the Barry Strong Foundation needs is money. Yeah. If somebody wants to donate, how can they do it?
Well, we have a website, barrystrongfoundation.com. You can click the link through there and donate. You could also, we have Instagram, Facebook. You can contact me. Just click that button. I would love to work with anybody. And for me, yes, money is a huge thing. And, raising money for research is great. But also the whole awareness aspect. And also if, there's anybody that wants to work on, a gold out game, or a school that wants to go gold, or even a workplace or anything, awareness equals funding. So making people aware is just as important as anything else, in my opinion.
Well, I'm so glad that you came on the show today, because first of all, the subject matter is tough to talk about. And then when you throw in that you're a private person to come on the podcast and tell your story, I know it's even tougher.
It was. I told a few of my friends that I was coming, and they said, "Oh, really? Are you going to be able to do that?" And I said, "Yes." And they get on to me all the time, because they're like, "Jennifer, not everybody knows the things you do in the community." And I'm like, I know, but it's been such a private journey for me. Like, honoring her these first few years has been very private and kind of therapeutic thing for me to do. And so I haven't let everybody know everything we do. And so my friends get on to me all the time about that, and I'm working on it. It's a process.
Well, as long as you're moving forward,
I'm trying.
That's all that matters. But well, Jennifer, what would you, I always give all my guests the last word, any parting shots, anything that's on your mind or on your chest that you want to get off, now's the time to do it.
If there's anything else I want to say, I would just love, we are so thankful to the community, Spanish Fort and Daphne and Fairhope, everybody that's kind of joined us on our journey. I don't think they'll ever know how much it's meant for them to love on my baby and continue her legacy and help us do that. It's been the most powerful thing for me in my road to, I say recovery, that sounds strange, but You
say your road to recovery, but yeah, I guess you never get over it, do you?
No, I don't think I ever will, and I don't want to.
Right. Well, just like when you started the show off, we were talking about your 3 children.
Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of how you got to go through life, huh?
You do, and I read a great poem the other day, and it really hit on exactly how I was feeling. I didn't know how to put it into words, but the struggle I think I have between mothering the living and mothering the dead is it's a very hard balance, because I know how important it is to love on my other children and grieve Caroline at the same time, and to include them in that. I've been really selfish in my grief. I think I'm the only one in the world that's missing her, and I'm not. There's a whole community, and then my husband and, Lauren and Logan both, and her friends. It's been really tough for me. I've been kind of selfish a tad.
Well, I don't think anybody's going to be critical of you for that.
Hope not.
Well, Jennifer, thanks so much for coming on. Everybody that's listening to this, go to the Barry Strong Foundation website, donate some money. We need to get the awareness for childhood cancer. We all know that, pink is breast cancer in October. We need to make gold for childhood cancer in September.
That'd be awesome, yes.
All right. Well, Jennifer, thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Rocket Motivation is made possible through the support of Gat Creek. The company builds furniture sustainability in America with a commitment to the health and safety of Gat Creek employees and customers and the environment we all share. Check out their full range of products at gatcreek.com. Thanks for listening to the show. If you're interested in getting my book, Get Back Up, just go to Amazon and put in Get Back Up and my name, Rod Caden. It'll pop right up. I would love it if you would subscribe to the podcast and rate and review the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. I would really appreciate it if you'd share it with a friend. I would like as many people to hear my message as possible. Never give up and always get back up. And we'll see you next week.